Hello, everyone. This is the editor group weekly product and design sync for January 20th, 2021. And I'll just kick off the agenda real quick. The only item I added was that I got a ping today from someone on our data team that they had resolved an issue with one of our Periscope dashboards for the wiki usage, which had been skewed. For context here, we have our data reported from SaaS and then self-managed, and then there's a percentage of our self-managed customers that don't report data. So we have an algorithm that estimates the uplift for those customers as if we can make some assumptions based on the percentage of people using certain features, et cetera, et cetera. And our uplift for a little while for Wiki was showing that we had like 4 million users, which was great. I think that would have been fun, but the uplift was a little generous. So this link I have in here shows a much more accurate estimate. It's still very exciting to see the shape of this graph for the wiki. I'm going to look into whether or not this is due to some new instrumentation that is reporting that maybe there was like an upgrade or something like that. But my suspicion is this is mostly just adoption of the group wikis and maybe the awareness of the wiki that came with us announcing group wikis. If that's the case, I'm very excited that so many people are taking advantage of group wikis. And it makes our decision to start investing in the rich text editor, but using the wiki as our playground even easier. I think we'll be able to reach a lot of people. And yeah, that's all I really have to say about that. I have to dig in deeper and understand the data model a little bit more and whether or not I can slice this up and confirm like which section of these are group wiki, but it should be possible. And then that should give me a better picture of whether all wikis saw an increase or if like that big jump in November was exclusively group wikis. I mean, because we're talking about like a 140, 150% jump.
Cool, thanks for sharing. In the agenda, you said it's like a week on week, but the chart is only like monthly active.
Oh, I meant like wow, as in whoa.
Okay.
Week over week is an acronym. W. No, I just meant it kind of blew my mind. Our increase from October to November. I should have used an emoji instead of capital letters. Thanks.
Yeah, it's all good.
Clarifying.
This makes this funny.
Because I read it as well, but I didn't even think that it could be.
Been spending too long with data, and in the context of what I was talking about, I can see why you would assume that was week over week. Yeah, it is month over month change that we're looking at.
Cool.
But wow, it's a big change. I just remembered the other thing I wanted to add to the design agenda is something I pinged you in issues. You may not have had a chance to see them yet, Michael, but the import team wants to make some changes to the drop downs for adding new projects and groups, which would conflict and complement the solution validation you just went through. Because I know you had a button there for like creating a new group and a new project, even new snippets. They're looking to pick this up in the next couple of releases. So we want to make sure we partner with them and they're aware of the direction we're headed and maybe have them collaborate on the MVC or just solve their problem for them if it's all just the same to do it in one place.
Cool. Yeah.
Can I get a link
I'm aware
here?
of that one, so that one's okay.
Yeah, and I think I can't find the link here, but there was in particular a decision point between whether they were going to add buttons to simply add a new group or project, or whether they wanted to introduce an import link as well, which didn't show up on your concept. So I just wanted to make sure we had a dialogue in the issue about whether that was part of the MVC.
Okay. Sounds good. I'm just trying to find that big epic thing that I created, like just a placeholder, so I can just link that to this. But I'll do that later today.
Cool. I'm just going to pull up the, when in doubt, I just look at my profile activity and go back through my comments. So I said, here's the issue. I'll put it in the agenda.
Cool.
So really, it sounded like there was a chance they might pick it up for 1310. And if we're starting our implementation of the top nav consolidation of those in 1310, which is my hope, but you know, it's nothing set in stone. I want to make sure we're not both trying to compete for changes and then their work gets overwritten. Yeah, so absolutely glad that you're keeping an eye on that one, and I'll work with their PM as well.
On a similar note of things that are happening in other teams that affect us is like the split this idea of the split button for the edit for the pipeline team, and how that might work. So I'm gonna be looking at some of that stuff this week as well, and just to like see if there's other solutions for it. Like at the moment, I'm pretty fine with the split button. I don't see it. I think it's a catalyst for us to potentially improve the way our split button works, because there's have been research studies in the past showing that the split button is confusing because of the way it works as a drop down more so than a button. But this could be a catalyst for improving that.
Yeah, that's great. I think the more, as I've mentioned, I think in the issue, the more we build out sort of use case optimized editing experiences, whether it's the static site editor or the pipeline visual editor, or like, you know, a rich text editor down the road, we're going to have a little more like heavy lifting to do on presenting the options in a way that's not overwhelming, so that people can pick the right editing experiences, and finding an intelligent default, which I know was discussed in those pipeline issues as well. It's like whether or not they should default to opening in that editor. So yeah, that's definitely an area we want to do a little more validation in.
I'll jump over to UX research now. So with settings solution validation, I think one thing that I was doing at the beginning of the year was like compounding a lot of things on top of each other. But speaking to Catherine, I'm almost seeing that there's potentially two unmoderated solution validations, or maybe just one. It's like looking at just the interaction. So there's that like save and updating items in the settings. So one of the ideas that we have is like this progressive review on adding and then showing the form to add the information there, seeing if that's a good direction forward to go with. Because yeah, if we can get a solution validation there, especially unmoderated, we could get like a signal on that prior to like creating tickets to get that developed. And the other one is I'm going to start off as I think it makes sense as an unmoderated solution validation, but navigating to a settings page from within the product. So this is part like looking at, oh, if I'm in the merge request or other parts of the application, like if I wanted to make some changes to this, how would I get to it? And this is might be like a small like foray into like exploring this deeper, but it's just saying like, is having on-page navigation somewhere helpful to improving the user experience of getting to settings and then getting back to where they came from. And my current hypothesis is like, this could be like the big thing within settings that's like plaguing us that we don't know. Because there's a lot of good work going on with like the IA and the same thing with the top navigation. But there's also something that like kind of appeared in looking at some of the top navigation that like switching between groups and projects and groups is probably a bigger problem to solve than really where things are located, because that could be muscle memory or searched solving. But I think everything, yeah, if everything's improves, then that's good as well. So yeah, I'm looking to try to kick this off by the end of the week or early next week, this stuff. And then my other point is around searching settings. So we already have it running in the handbook project and some other internal, more like GitLab level, GitLab team member accessible areas. So I'm debating whether that should be done internally or whether that should we should just activate another project and have that as a moderated solution validation to like get deeper insights on that. So I'm gonna focus on that one after after the unmoderated ones go out the door. So I'll probably look for your input on like things that we need to actually pull out or get direction on.
And with that one, what are some of the things you're considering doing it internally versus as a moderated?
Because
External.
it's like because it's like you need to actually search is more like which projects are actually enabled with search right now in settings. So that was one consideration on why I might do it internally. At this moment, like searching is almost like a universal behavior. So whether it's internal or external, I don't think there's much difference in like behaviors. But as long as whoever we speak to actually interact with settings on a regular basis, that's probably the key thing. And then, yeah, for the bigger question is like with searching settings, and if we go trying to get a signal to see how we might do multi-page settings like search. So if I'm on I'm on the first page of settings, what's the best way to do search of all settings? Is it in that search bar that that we've executed on at the top of the page, or is it like the global search, or do we need to make some other UI changes to make it make sense that this is a global setting search rather than an in-page search? So that's what I'm kind of curious about.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Yeah, that all sounds good. And also that just tactically speaking, the search component is just behind a feature flag. So we should be able to enable that for another project easily if we decide to go that route, or just leave it on the .com repository. I don't know if it could be a challenge. We need to make sure that our recruiters actually have access to the settings view. And so I guess they're maintainers or developers. I don't know if developers have access to all the settings in the project level, but yeah. But yeah, we can figure that out. And I think getting a little bit of an indication on expectations for global search of settings will be really helpful as well. So I'm interested to see if we're meeting people's expectations here.
Yeah, and I think that's where I can see some external feedback being useful when it comes more to that question around what people are expecting to search for, what they need it for, because that might differ from some of our use cases. But yeah, overall, I think Michael's thought process around that made sense to me. And so my point is just a FYI that I have wrapped up today. We reached our 50 response number today. So I've wrapped up the project level left sidebar tree test. So now I'm in the data analysis and synthesis phase of pretty much everything we've collected so far. So I just shared a sheet where that is going on. And I will just quickly give you a little bit of a overview of what that's all about. So basically, we have kind of like two sets of information architecture research data. One set is from before 2020, so around 2018 when we were doing quite a lot of research. And then the next set is the recent rounds that we were doing as part of this OKR. And so what I'm going to do in this sheet is take basically all the different feedback that we've gathered throughout the years and all the different patterns that we observed in these tests and kind of see where they align across different tests. They're not going to align one for one most of the time because they're group level versus project level, but there are some areas that were tested in both tests, like insights around repositories that is relevant both at the project and group level that might paint a picture into a potential miscategorization or things like that. So what I'm doing is taking that data and then I'll also take our SUS survey feedback and then compare that with some of the observations and recommendations that we received in the past and try to see if there's a picture kind of being painted across the different data sources. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that that's where I'm at right now. Hopefully next week we can start to discuss more of those findings and have a better picture of that. But that's where we're at now. And if you're curious, you can kind of flick around through as I start to add more and more things to this sheet, but that's where it'll all be.
This is great. I love the breakdown of the data. I'll be poking around, but very interested in your synthesis of it as you make progress.
Yeah, there are definitely some interesting things. Like so there was the ops group, what was it? Monitor. One of the groups in the ops section conducted a first click test. And basically what was interesting there is that there were a lot of things around finding things in issues or like incidents, alerts, error tracking, quite a lot of things associated with issues. And so I want to see if in other tests that we were seeing a pattern like that. And one that came up, for example, in both tests so far from what I've seen is metrics being associated with analytics. And I've also seen things like the code coverage summary being associated with different parts of analytics. Or some splits between analytics insights and the more specific name like code review or repository. So that's kind of where I'm digging in deeper and yeah, should be interesting to talk about next week.
Cool. Very, very excited. I mean, that with no sarcasm at all. This is very interesting, and our one of the next biggest areas of improvement I think we can tackle with fairly limited impact, I should say. Like we can make changes here with high results but low like dependency on back-end code-based changes and things like that. I think we can move some stuff around and get a lot of value. Specifically, like as you were just mentioning, people are looking for things and they kind of relate them to issues. In our parlance, like issues make sense to be like all the plan features make sense in there, but maybe incidents and alerts should be in there as well. People don't always experience GitLab by stage and how we're like organized. So I think that's probably our biggest takeaway here, or I'm guessing that will be one of our bigger takeaways here.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting topics with things like incidents where there's, I think we were talking about this, Michael, where there's a similar pattern. I think they're both issue types, or the incident is an issue type. So there's like something that might remind them of, the incident might remind them of an issue, but it might not actually belong in that category, depending on how we are categorizing things. So there's kind of potentially a friction point in some places that'll be interesting to discuss with the different groups about what they think about these findings and if it makes sense. But I also think it points towards more of the workflows that people have. So one other topic that ties into what Michael was saying about settings is kind of this, there's another level of navigation or another method that we need for wayfinding and finding features aside from them just existing in the left sidebar. Because right now that's like the main way that groups will promote the discoverability of a feature or kind of just place a new thing there. But if there are other ways that users can discover these features in like a sensible way in their workflow, I think that might help with the problem of things kind of loading up in the left sidebar. So that's why I think all of this will be interesting to see if these are like related to different pathways, like, you start in issues and then you go into incidents and then you kind of do something else. And maybe that's why they're kind of being clustered together rather than incidents needing to be an item under issues or something like that. I don't know if that made sense, but that's what I'm trying to tease apart here in what we're seeing in the data. Okay, but yeah, so that's it for me for today. I will come back with more information the next time.
Great.
So one quick thing, while you were talking, I spent a little time looking at that query to see what the result of the spike is, but yeah, it's like hidden behind some function that has some magic size sensitive variables, and yeah, it's not just understanding SQL. So I'd like to know more about size sense to know how to figure those things out, but I would have to learn too.
Yeah. Yeah, I did the same thing, and that query is far, far, far beyond what I'm able to parse. So I
was going to try to just
I'll,
run it, but I don't
mhm.
know how they get those variables in there. It's probably not hard
Yeah,
if you know.
yeah. Well, I think we can put out a request to the data team to help, or at least help us learn how to do it. But I'm just happy that our numbers are at least more realistic. And the two potential scenarios are that group wikis were adopted very quickly, and or we were or are using the wrong numbers.
So just scanning the dashboard that contains that, which has like all of those other X whatever AU, they also show like these drastic spikes around August or the end of last year. So it could be a data. They got new data in.
Yeah, well, in the last quarter or two, there have been big pushes across groups to get that instrumented, especially in self-managed. So for a lot of groups, they maybe only had it in SAS or instrumented, not completely at all. So that I think the graphs for a lot of the groups are going like up, starting about mid-year as the new data was coming in. I think it was like a 12-4, 12 or 13-4, 13-5 or something like that when we were trying to get everything in. I don't know, static site editor had that in. you were working on that, and that was all part of that big push. So we're getting the data hopefully in a consistent and accurate as we can manner. So we'll verify that and then try and slice it up by group wiki and see what we get. I sure hope it's real though, because it would be exciting. Be a lot of new users. That's it for me. I believe that's it for the agenda. No need to keep you longer, but if anybody has anything else before we stop, I can turn it over. Chat anything else you wanted to chat about? Cool. We'll get I think we'll get a few minutes back from the scheduled time, but hope everybody has a great rest of your day or beginning of your day, and we'll see you next week, and most of the editor team we'll see tomorrow.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.